Hello. Welcome everyone to the Soul Living Co podcast. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Tina. She's going to be sharing her story of her journey, her spiritual awakening, and maybe share little notes on what we can expect on the path. And according to her experience, she will share a little bit of her wisdom. So I want to thank you for participating, Tina. And listeners, you will receive some information on where to contact her. And also you can always visit soullivingco.com to connect with me. So Tina is a Reiki practitioner. She studied because she was looking for a way to empower her own prayers to kind of help her aunt, as her aunt was suffering through some illnesses. This led her down a travel excursion to the Pacific Northwest, where she practiced some spiritual development in the with the Baha'i faith. This led her to having some interesting dreams with animals for the next 8 months. And Tina's going to share with us what came of that, how that all came about, and what happened, Tina. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yes, my favorite aunt got sick with stomach cancer, and I had a friend who was also a Reiki master, and I asked her, would Reiki help my prayers? Because I would read her prayers every night for about 20 minutes, and this went on for about 2 years. But then, when she became bedridden, and my uncle asked me if I could come and help, I got on a plane the same day and I went to be by her side. And so, as I hadn't been a Reiki master for very long, and I really only had like a couple of patients. So, when I did some Baha'i prayers and I did Reiki at the same time, and I called upon when I called upon like the angels and the saints and the mages and the sages and the past Reiki masters to be with me as I prayed, to hold her hand, to walk into the light. She said she could see them standing next to me, and I was like, "You can?" And she was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Wow, this stuff really works."
Right. Cool. But before we go any further, could you talk and tell us a little bit more about what is Reiki? Because some of the listeners may not know what Reiki is. And then also a little bit more about the Baha'i faith, some information about that as well, because that may be some new information for some of our listeners too.
Uh, Reiki Reiki is an energy healing. It's kind of like how some people say laying on of hands, but it's not a religious in orientation. Um, it was originated in Japan, so it's energy healing. And the Baha'i faith, um, they believe that all the religions are true, and that each one came at a certain time for the development of mankind. And I was went to a spiritual gathering at Nia Bay. It was the Macaw Reservation, and it was this weekend. It was a weekend that I had like goosebumps the entire weekend. It wasn't just for a few minutes here or there. It was the entire weekend. I had goosebumps, and I didn't even mind that it was raining, and there was probably about 4 inches of rain in the bottom of my tent. Because I was went there for the weekend with a friend, and she became Baha'i too. And When I got home from Nia Bay, I started having dreams every night, and they were vivid, lucid dreams to the point that I wasn't sure that I'd actually gone to sleep. But seeing that I was rested, I was must have been asleep. And so I people said, "Oh, well, write them down." And so I did. I wrote them down, and I kept writing them down. And the friend that went with me, I knew her from we'd taken college classes together in English class, and so she was better in organizing things in sort of a sequential pattern or something. As far as writing, I put it into a poem, and she helped me with the poem organize all the animals, which came first, and then the next, and the next.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting too. That's our next note, because you were saying that during the dreams, you received messages from these animals as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
you were kind of able to weave that into a poem. Is that right?
Yes. When I started having these dreams, I had no idea what they were or why. And so anybody that I thought looked like Native American, I would share them with this to see if they knew what it meant or why I was having all these dreams. And one shop I went into that sold Native American art, um, the man at the that owned the place said, "Oh well, if you get the book Animal Speak by Ted Andrews, it'll explain all these animals." And so I got this book, and every time I had a dream, I'd open up the book, and what it said about the animal was exactly what I had dreamed. So even if it was a daydream, like a chickadee or something, I'd open the book and it would say, um, this is a symbol of truth. And that was what I had daydreamed about, was um, some other another Native American fellow had told me that news, if you have you heard the news, actually means the four directions. Have you heard the complete truth? So it'd be like northeast, west, and south. It'd be the four directions. And have you heard the complete truth? And so when I dreamed of this chickadee and it's saying, have you heard the news? And then opening the book and it said a symbol of truth, it was all fell together. So
Yeah. It was kind of like a completion there. For,
yeah,
well, would you like to share the poem with us?
yes, I would be delighted to.
Okay.
It's called Walk With Me. Have you heard the wind whisper your name? Do you do you know of the animals that walk in your dreams? The ones that can follow you from that world to this? And when you speak with them, they answer. Have you heard the words of the ancestors when the eagle cry? Let me tell you of my journey. Since I walked with you there for the first time last summer, I wandered with the world to and fro, never knowing I was lost, until I saw a black bear that ambled and muttered, Wake, awake. I stared after her, quite puzzled, till I saw a larger brown bear. She stood at the forest's edge and waved, and I followed her to Nia Bay. At the clearing's edge, I heard a chickadee sing. Have you heard the news? Hear it here, hear it here. And above me soared eagle. To avoid being impolite, I spoke to her, discussing the beginning and the end, the middle, the circle, and its center. She alighted to a branch and replied, The beginning is our past, the end is our future, and the middle is adjustable to find balance. The circle is our creator, and its center is us, here and now. And with that, she was gone. I turned and saw Beaver. This is the flute Beaver made. And when he gave it to me, he said, The best gifts given are those that ask no reward. From the center of the clearing, I could see many paths and wondered which one to choose when a golden eagle landed here on my flute and said, Choose the path of wisdom, for there you find honor. I walked this way some distance with a she wolf by my side, and I asked her, Why do you cry in the dark? She said, Do you remember when man and wolf shared the first fire? I offered him my protection, and in trade asked that we walk side by side. In bond, I gave him a pup, and in like, he accepted and raised her as his own. Along the way, he did forsake our path, and now I howl at the night for the pup and the promise forgotten. Further on, I met Buck and Doe. They gave me these pieces of hide and said, take only what you need, and you will always have enough. Crow gave me these beads and said, humor gives life color, but not wanting to pluck one of her own feathers, she gave me one of Raven's, telling me it was her own. White Dove gave me this feather and said, peace is only found when your path is walked in love. Just then I heard the distress cry of Rabbit and ran to her aid, only to find a great horned owl feeding 3 downy chicks. They turned to me and in unison asked, did you give thanks with morning's first breath? And I solemnly replied, yes, for the morrow is promised to none. Red Tail Hawk gave me this feather and said, surviving is a struggle, but living takes courage. And of all the people I had met, I had hoped to speak with Brother Heron and found him fishing a small pond. But when I approached, he flew away, saying, patience isn't perfect till it's practiced.
Wow, I love that. I love
Thank
that. You
you.
know what? And that sounds like a poem that every time you listen to it, something new will kind of pop up for you, right? It's kind of like the Tao Te Ching. If you've ever listened to that book of it's poetry, it's like it's beautiful and it's simply written. And it's kind of like every time you listen to it, something new will kind of come or arise from that. When I was listening, something kind of popped out for me, and that was to I don't remember what the animal was, but it was following the path, not looking for reward, or like not
The beaver.
the beaver. Now, when you kind of were kind of going down this path of yours, the spiritual path of yours, did you ever feel like I'm going to do these things, this healing work to attain something? Or was it always more of like I'm just doing it because I feel called to? Like what was your
I just wanted to help, I guess. I had taken nursing before I went to Nia Bay, and so I guess that's just doing nursing,
yeah,
helping the patient.
yeah. What was the moment for you that you knew that it was like your path and
Um,
your calling where you kind of decide to go like full force with like healing work?
well, I also was a volunteer with a Hope. It's a therapeutic writing academy for disabled children and adults. And one day while I was down there volunteering, there was another volunteer that would bring the horses from pasture to the arena, and we'd unload the horses and put them in the barn. And well, the other fellow, he was unloading the horses, but he'd forgotten to untie the horse's head. And when he went into the trailer, the horse panicked and kind of squished him. But this man had a neck that was fused with ankylosing spondylitis, and so when the horse kind of bucked and thrashed um, in the trailer, he broke his neck, and he died in my arms. And I talked to my Reiki master about this, and she said that he had chosen me beforehand to help him pass on. And so that's when I knew. Well, and then after he passed, my nephew had committed suicide too. He was 17 and had stepped in front of a train. But um, when I sent my sister, I was so grieved that I didn't even really send my sister flowers right away. It wasn't until 3 weeks after uh, that I'd sent her some flowers, and I had accidentally sent them to the wrong address because she had a house that was a rental that she was putting up for sale, and this was the address I'd sent them to. And when she got to the house, she was going there that day to pick up some pillows because the auctioneer had said she needed to have everything out of the house, and she'd forgotten some pillows over there. And when she pulled into the driveway, a delivery driver pulled in right behind her, and she didn't know what it was or who it was. And she got out, and he said, "Oh, what good timing! Here's the flowers." And he doesn't even know what good timing was because she doesn't even live there. And then she said, "Well, how am I supposed to get these home?" And he said, "Well, if you had some pillows." And that was what she was going there for. So not only did these become just, they didn't come on the right date or the right address, but they were more than just flowers you received at the funeral. They were amazing flowers. But
Right.
before he had passed, I had received a message I did about him, and I didn't really understand what it was, but I'd heard he was never meant to be, and I had no idea what this was, or so I never told her about that.
Yeah. What would be one of the, like, on your path, what is one of the lies that you lived in the past that you have kind of overcome, or maybe your mind has changed about it since you've become a little bit more in tune
It
spiritually?
was it was people. I never really was attached to people or thought much of people or had deep relationships with people. But after that, it was more like I could see people. I could see them for the human beings that they are,
Mm.
that everybody has a light of God inside them and look for the light.
Yeah. And what would you, if you could tell or share with, a light worker or a person that's intuitive, or empathic, or kind of maybe just starting their journey, what is one thing that you would like to share with them on, if they're struggling maybe?
I think it was truth, that always search for truth. It Don't rely on the the religions of old that your fathers have taught you, or the history of old that they say, because there's two sides to every history. There's their side, and then there's the truth, and the truth isn't always as obvious as mainstream media would like you to believe.
Yeah. Is there any book or maybe books that you think would benefit listeners in their
I
journey?
like I like The Prophet, and I like Poems of Bear, and these are like love poems to God or whatever. They're just so touching.
Yeah. Well, and what's like a good investment that you made spiritually on your path, whether that be time or money?
I was
What's
taking the Reiki class. It was I'm really grateful for and knowing a friend that knew Reiki. I wasn't interested in it or wanted to learn anything about it. It was just something. I know a friend that is a Reiki master, la la la. And so then when you know, my aunt got sick, and the uh, I took the class, I really realized that it really was helpful, because in Reiki you can do distant healing too.
Mhm.
So Reiki
Thank
class.
you. I love that one. Um, and if you could assign one affirmation to everyone on the planet, what would that affirmation be?
I am a prayer that waits to be spoken.
I love that. I love that so much. And Tina, I want to thank you for speaking with us today and sharing your story and your beautiful poem and all of your wisdom with us.
You're welcome.